Welcome to the VetMed Wellness and Leadership Podcast, where we discuss central challenges VetMed leaders face, such as burnout, stress, and difficult interactions with clients and staff, just to name a few. In each episode, you will hear about actionable solutions that you can apply to your practice and invitations to connect with fellow leaders who are passionate about improving the wellness of the VetMed profession. By subscribing, liking, commenting, or sharing this podcast, you are helping more veterinary professionals find the resources shared in these episodes. Thank you in advance for listening and supporting this show. I hope you enjoy it. Hey everybody, Crystal Stokes here, and joining me today is Martin Traub-Werner, who is the founder of VetBooks, and he joins us to talk about the importance of having financial control over your practice and how having it can help support your mission to provide excellent medicine to your community of pets. But before we dive into that, let's hear more about Martin's background. Martin, can you tell us more, who are you and what are you doing?
Really happy to be here. Thanks for spending time with me today. So I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a business nerd, and I found myself about 15 years ago. I landed in VetMed kind of by accident. I was doing some sales and marketing integration, some data-driven marketing work outside of VetMed. Found a problem in VetMed, which was the fact that there was no standardized codes in the PIMS. And was trying to do some data-driven marketing, but couldn't tell what was happening because there was no code standardization. And so I started standardizing codes in PIMS. This is a business called VetSuccess. That VetSuccess turned into the industry's first business intelligence and data analytics company at a time when data was just starting to be cool. In 2018, VetSuccess was acquired by VetSource, and that's the genesis of the VetSource data analytics platform that is still in use today and a leading data analytics platform today. I stayed with VetSource until 2022, and then left and leaned into a project that I had started a little earlier, 2017, 2018, with some friends called VetBooks. Because during my VetSuccess days, while I was putting data in front of practice owners, they'd say, Martin, this is great, like visit data and revenue data, and it's all the PIM stuff, right? All the, client retention and new client numbers. But they always wanted to know about their profitability. Can you tell me about my profitability? I'm like, no, man. Like, there's no expense side in the PIMS. So to figure out your profitability, I'd have to do your books every month using the BMG AAHA chart of accounts, accrual basis, and it's a heavy lift. And some of our clients said, well, you should do that. I was like, wait, what? Okay. So I cobbled together a team of people, and one of them was an accountant, now retired, Glenn Hanner, who was like, Martin, this is super hard. Like, you have no idea how hard it is. So I was like, come on, let's do this. It'll be fun. It'll be super worthwhile, super valuable. He's like, no, it's hard. I'm like, come on. He finally relented. And of course, he was right. It is super hard to do well. But today we service well over 100 practices and all independents, and we bring them financial control, and they've got confidence that their numbers are done right. And it's been a fun journey. It's been a joy.
Sounds like you enjoy solving problems.
I mean, that's what entrepreneurialism is. It's just sort of like problem solving, right? Here's a problem. How do I solve it? What are all the things that can kill me and stop me from solving this problem? Let me slam those doors, let me mitigate that risk. Let me figure out that liability. Every day you wake up and you live to fight another day is a great day.
Love that. I hear you. And I wanted to ask, when I checked out your website, I was struck by the picture on the front. So there's an image, if those of you who want to go to the website for VetBooks, what you'll see here is a gorgeous dog. What is that? A Vizsla? I believe it's a Vizsla, laying on the sofa. And the mom, the human mom, like laying on her dog with her eyes closed, just looks very peaceful. I'd like to be that lady or that dog. Honestly, either one would be fine. And it says, we deliver clean, accurate, and timely financials every month so you can make confident decisions, grow your practice, and sleep better at night. I was like, yeah, financial stress can really keep you up. So can you tell me more about why you all chose that image?
Yeah, this whole idea of sleeping better at night, I don't put it, I don't reference it lightly as I think about my own entrepreneurial journey and any financial success that I've had, and any business success I've had, not just financial, but just sort of operational success. And I always seem to come back to the importance of being under financial control, right? Knowing what your numbers are. Like, numbers don't really lie, right? You can lie with numbers, but the numbers don't lie. And this idea of knowing what your numbers are and having a starting point so that when you wake up in the middle of the night in a cold sweat because a team member quit, a new competitor entered the space, technology change, which is super relevant today, somebody wants to acquire your business, you want to acquire a business, all of these questions fundamentally come down to, what do my financial numbers look like today before this change, and tomorrow after this change, and to model. And so this, based on my personal experience, right? Like, I have had many nights in my career where I've woken up at 3:00 in the morning, cold sweat, feeling like I'm going to struggle or miss an opportunity, and there have been many nights. I almost need to name them. I've got to figure out good branding for this kind of night, right? It's sort of it's this sort of night where where I find myself at my computer at 3:00 in the morning looking at my financials. And the reason that worked for me is because I had always invested in making sure that the numbers were right and timely and accurate, that they were accurate, right? Mm-hmm. Because if you start from a place where you don't know that your numbers are right, then what happens? We're making decisions based on faulty information. It's disastrous. So, knowing your margins, knowing your cost profile, knowing your labor costs, understanding what the market can bear on pricing. What happens if you raise your prices by, if you raise your prices by 10% and people are like, you can't raise your prices by 10%. You're going to lose a ton of clients. Well, you only lose 2% of your clients and you've raised your prices by 10%. You're ahead of the gains. And it's only in really understanding the interplay of your numbers that you can sort of model that. And it's a skill that, now I'm on a soapbox. I apologize. It's a muscle that can get exercised, right? I've had practice owners look at me and say, I don't really understand my financials. I don't like to look at my financials. They cause me anxiety. And it's I don't know, you're diagnosticians. You'll be fine. Just don't be scared.
I was thinking the exact same thing, that the archetype of humans that are attracted to vet med, myself being one of them, we tend to have some perfectionistic tendencies and we like to do things in, quote, the right way. We love data. So you have a pet come in, we like to run those diagnostics. You want to have the labs. You want to know the baseline. You want to know what's off. And that knowledge is considered power in medicine. So I think that parallel works really well. However, the therapist in me goes, that's the logical side. We are also highly emotional creatures in veterinary medicine. And the emotional part of us will often say things like, I didn't get into it for the money. And this feel of trying to go after financial control maybe brings up some fear around being seen as greedy, or I'm only in it for the money. So could you speak to that sentiment? 'Cause I'm sure you've heard it before.
I have. And in fact, our mutual friend, Danny Rabwin from Ready Vet Go, Danny and I, did a lovely presentation called "Care versus Capital: Can the Two Coexist?" Um, and and we're actually doing a workshop based on that talk in the coming weeks, and are intending to bring that to individual practice teams as well. It's this idea that, you know, yes, money is emotional and people are emotional about it, but like you don't walk into there's this feeling like we should be discounting everything, right? You- you- there's very few people who walk into their. I mean, I don't walk into a hair salon or a barber at all, but but like very few people who walk into their hair salon or barber and say like, well, can you give me a discount on your services? Or I don't feel like I should be paying for my pedicure because I, had my hair done. Right. It's like people expect to pay for services. So charge fairly, appreciate that, the cost of your services is the sum total, not just of the input costs, but all of your investments in capital, equipment, and education, and just being there with the knowledge to solve problems, and charge with confidence. Um, I often say, frankly, I feel like I say this almost every day, that working in a business that's making money is way more fun than working in a business that isn't making money.
And way more fun.
Way more fun. And by the way, I've worked in both, and so this is a firsthand experience. And yes, you got into you may have gotten into vet med to take care of all the animals, but if you're writing checks into the business because you can't cover your costs, like that is just not long-term sustainable. It's not long-term sustainable. So, people treat profit like a 4-letter word, and it's really not. You need to embrace profitability, and not a guaranteed way to do it, but a way that will at least make it easier to do that is if you really understand your numbers and are under financial control.
I think something you and I talked about in preparation for this podcast is how money can be seen as this form of energy that can be used to help achieve your mission. I think that it's not just about taking all the money for ourselves and lining our pocketbooks. It could be reinvesting in the business, growing the team, further education, better equipment, whatever that may be, being able to scale and see more patients. So I think that that's another aspect that we might sometimes be short-sighted about and not recognize that money is this like form of currency or energy that can be used to do even better work.
Yeah. I mean, if your practice is making money, if a practice is making money, practice is making a lot of money. It doesn't mean that the practice owner is in their right to do whatever they want with that money. It is their money, right? But they can give it all away. I mean, they can discount it. They can be generous with their staff. They can hire, more staff. They can take on new equipment, new capital. They can do the optionality around having money is significant. And it does it does translate into energy, right? It translates into where you want to spend your time, how you want to spend your time. Ironically, not having money also translates into energy, but it is negative energy that is hard to deal with.
Yeah. Like you mentioned, the anxiety. When we're waking up at 3 a.m. with that cold sweat feeling, that's anxiety. And as a therapist who specializes in anxiety, anxiety really lives off uncertainty and the seeking of certainty. So not having information, that feeds the anxiety monster because it can make up all sorts of stories. So I think that's a good segue into, the difference between having financial control and not. Like, let's build the case a little bit for people if we can.
Well, so maybe I'll take that question to mean like how do you bring financial control, right?
Yeah.
Um, so what are some of the steps you can take? So that's the first thing is just a commitment to not being scared of the numbers. And like, if there are practice owners, DVMs, techs listening to this, you are diagnosticians, right? Like, you read diagnostics on a regular basis. All financials, all an income statement is, or balance sheet is a diagnostic of your practice. It tells you what financial state your practice is in, and it's a muscle that can be exercised. And I, at the risk of putting myself out of work a little bit, like, if you're too embarrassed to ask somebody about your income statement, drop it into ChatGPT and ask ChatGPT questions, right? If you don't want to talk about it with somebody, talk about it with ChatGPT. Because comfort with the financial questions and just bringing a natural curiosity to the financials will open doors, right? It's like, you can ask yourself some key ratios. What percentage of my revenue is generated by pharmacy sales versus what percent of my revenue is generated by services? And where do I want that number to be? And what does it mean for my practice if I'm generating so much more, a higher percentage of revenue from pharmacy sales than from services? And you just start having those conversations with yourself on a regular basis. And it requires a little bit of rigor. And it absolutely requires that your financials be right and timely, which is, the reason our services exist. But if you've gotten your numbers and you're just curious, just lean into your curiosity, that'll take you a long, long way.
I really appreciate that. So those that come in, just to walk through it again, number one, just commit to not being afraid. Like, come into it with curiosity. If there's some fear there of like the shame of showing it to another human, you can start with ChatGPT to kind of warm up to the idea, but then ultimately really going through the process to understand. I just picture it like a control panel where you have all these different levers you can pull on. You can pull on the pharmacy lever. You can pull on the services lever. You can pull on, money going out, like staffing and the operational like aspects of your business. You can play with all these different dials and adjust them based on what's going on in the world at large. Like, when we all went through COVID, it's like, oh crap, the way I had the dial set isn't working. Like, we need to make major adjustments. And if you have that comfort already with what your status quo is, then when things change that might be outside of our control, you are kind of prepared and ready to play with your dials or your, I don't know, the different levers within the business.
Yeah. One of the things that we deliver to our clients on a monthly basis is a list of their top 10 revenue categories, top 10 cost of goods sold categories, and top 10 operating expense categories. And and you don't need our service to do that. You can do that yourself, so long as your books are done properly and done right, and done timely. And that's where the action is. 90% of the action happens in those 30 categories, right? Top 10 revenue, top 10 COGS, top 10 operating expenses. And so if you're working on a project that is outside of one of those categories, you just need to have the intellectual honesty to say, like, okay, I'm working on something that I might be passionate about, I might have interest in, there might be a really good reason for me to be doing that, but it's not one of my top 10 revenue, cost of goods sold, or operating expense categories. And you just sort of talk about energy, like, where are you putting your time and energy? Conversely, if you are spending time on those top 10, you are going to have a better return on your time and energy.
So it helps you prioritize.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And why do people choose? So you mentioned you work with independent practices. Have you noticed the theme and like why they come and seek out your all support versus trying to go it alone? Like, I'm assuming they were probably doing something on their own before. Like, what is it that they're looking for that makes them come on board?
I mean, so there's two elements to that. The first is our service exists, and there are other really great veterinary financial bookkeepers as well. But the veterinary bookkeeping now is only exists because of the complexity of the business, right? Because you're actually not running a business. You're running about 7 or 8 businesses. You've got, general practice, your pharmacists, your potentially oncologists, your groomers, your dentists, and each one of those line items, each one of those lines of revenue lines has its own cost and margin profile. And so there's real complexity. So people come to us because they want to understand the structure of their business with a little more granularity. And a regular bookkeeper, a non-veterinary bookkeeper, and certainly a non-veterinary accountant will often say, "Oh, you don't need all that. You don't need all that complexity. Like, you just have, you've got revenue in, you've got costs out, and what's the profit at the end?" And they don't have an appreciation. So, we've got an appreciation for the complexity of the business, and we understand, you'll as I joke with our prospective clients, you'll never get the question from us, like, what is Serenia? Who is IDEX? Like, you'll never get those, like, there's industry context that really matters.
Right.
So that's one reason that people come to us. And the other reason people come to us is because, honestly, like, as I often say, it's like we have a level of expertise that you don't have, and you've got an expert level of expertise that we don't have. Like, I'll often joke with our practice owners, like, okay, doc, I'll make you a deal. I'll stay out of your surgery suite. You stay out of QuickBooks, right? because like there is expertise in getting the practice under financial control. And once the practice is under financial control, so this is the case for bookkeeping. Like, bookkeeping unto itself is an activity, but the output of it is financial control. And that then enables, conversations with suppliers. It enables conversations with operational consultants. It enables conversations with accountants. It enables conversations with insurance, with banking, with tax and estate planning. Like, it opens up all the realm of financial conversations when you put the financial controls at the core. But if you're out of control, then all of those relationships don't have the inputs to maximize the return of and to really make the most out of the expertise that you're surrounding yourself with. And so this is sort of the argument that financial control is sort of this core function in the business.
I really like that statement of, like, I'll stay out of your surgical suite and you stay out of QuickBooks. And it's relieving, I think, oftentimes too, with independent practices, the owner or owners often wear so many hats. And so they're not getting to really, spend their time doing the things that would move the needle the most and what they enjoy most, where their strengths are. So being able to say, hey, I can pass this over to you guys. That frees me up to do X, Y, Z that I've been dying to do. That's a great situation. And I keep thinking of all these cliches in my head now. I'm like, knowledge is power. When they have the knowledge, they can open up these conversations of big changes they can make in their business, again, to make it more sustainable over time. So I think that's a really good point to make for why being under financial control is definitely the next move. I know we're coming up on time, and I know we talked about many, many things. So those of us that listen to podcasts, myself included, often only retain a couple of things. So if we're going to point people in a direction and have them remember nothing else from this podcast today except for a couple of points, what do you want them to take away today?
Don't be scared of financials. Like the financials are your friend. Profit is not a 4-letter word. Profit is a noble quest. Commit to getting under financial control. Whether that's by learning how to do the books yourself or hiring a veterinary specific bookkeeper. It will make a world of difference to your ultimate success. Even more granularly, if you're not using the BMG AAHA chart of accounts, use the BMG AAHA chart of accounts. If you don't know what the BMG AAHA chart of accounts is, Google BMG AAHA chart of accounts. It's the system by which veterinary practices organize their financials. And it's been well thought out and well debated over a number of years, almost a decade. And that's a good place to start.
I can link that up in the show notes for people. And then finally, where can people find you if they want to connect?
VetBooks.com. You can also email me, martin@vetbooks.com. You can find me on LinkedIn. With a last name like Traub-Werner, not that hard to find.
Awesome. Again, I'll put all that in the show notes. People don't have to hunt for it. And, Martin, I really enjoyed the conversation today, and I do appreciate you being on.
Thanks, Crystal. I really enjoyed our time together. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for joining me today. I hope that you feel stoked after listening to this episode. And as always, I would love to hear your comments and feedback. Is there a topic that you want to know more about? Please let me know. And thank you again for subscribing and sharing your favorite episodes with others. It really means a lot.